Hey, good morning. This is Matt Johnson with the IEP Resource Center. Hopefully, you guys can all hear me at this point. And by the way, if you have any issues with sound, video, those kind of things, please let us know. The session is being recorded today. It's also being captioned. Thank you for doing that, Sky. So we'll be looking through that today. At today's session, we'll be going over access to the administrative functions within Indiana IEP, some of the roles that are and responsibilities that are built into that. And we'll also be looking at some kind of common issues and resolutions for those. And I'm going to show you where you can find some guidance also after today. Like I said, the session today, first of all, will be recorded and will be available to you after this morning. So you'll get an email with a link to the video and a link also, I think, or the actual certificate will be mailed to you as well. So you'll get credit for being here with us this morning. Our session will run till about 11:30. Hopefully we'll get the information out and your questions answered as we're going through that. So welcome this morning. Thanks for being here. Hopefully we'll get through what you need to hear today. So I do have a few resources that I wanted to point to first before we get too deep into the system. A couple things that I need to mention. One thing, and most of you are being administrators in the system and for your school systems, we do have a walkthrough course that's built into that we've built recently, and that can be found here. It's I'm going to put that into the chat so you guys can see the message here. So put that into the chat as a link, and I meant to send that to everybody. So let me try that again. There we go. That should get everybody now. So that's a link to our learning management system. It's built off the Moodle platform. It's the only course that's available right now is the walkthrough for the Indiana IEP system for teachers of record. So that's built in there right now. It's got screenshots, videos, text, guidance around the whole system. This is one example you see up here. This is the access procedures. This is something we're going to talk about here shortly, but that's where the process starts. And then it walks through every section of the IEP system. Like I said, it usually has 3 modes of access. You have a video, you have a text, and you have a PowerPoint slideshow that'll walk you through with screenshots as well. And within that, it has all examples of all the documents that the system creates. So you can see an example of what those all look like too. So if you're new to the system or you know someone who is, this is a nice tool to offer. It also allows you to go through, first of all, go through the whole thing and get a certificate for completing it. And if you're not interested in that, you still have access to all the resources. So if you wanted to just jump in and click on the goals section, they can go through that whole presentation around the goals in the IEP system. So that's a resource that we have out there for you. The other thing that I needed to point to today is an evaluation form that we have in place. So since we're meeting virtually, we are doing our evaluations virtually as well. And will look something like this. You'll see, if you go to the link that I just provided, the indianaiprc.org/eval, there's a selection for today, and you can complete that evaluation online. So I'll come back to that a couple times today and toward the end of our time. So I know some of you, as I'm thinking about it, have lots of responsibilities, lots of things going on during your school day. If you need to leave early, that's fine. Just let us know. And I'd still ask you to complete that evaluation for what portion you were able to participate in. So we'll hopefully get you what you need there. So having said those two things, I want to go to our website. This is indianaiprc.org, and this is our homepage. One of the things I wanted to point out as we're starting today is where you can get a walkthrough for administrators, and that's in our Learning Center. If you go into our Learning Center, there's a whole section dedicated to the IEP system. You click on that. You're going to have some walkthroughs and videos there at the top of the page, one for behavior intervention plans, one for the Indiana IEP Anytime, which is our first, we do this every year where we record and broadcast the first IEP walkthrough we do to start the school year. That's what that is. Next to it, we'll have downloads that will address that. There's the access procedure and walk through a document. Below this, there is Indiana IEP tips and tools, and these are your administrator tools. So there's a playlist here that has walkthrough, move-ins, transfer, educational evaluation, all that kind of stuff. Things we're going to go through these today, but there's a refresher if you need to hit that video again. We're also building, by the way, a course in our learning management system for this, so that's in the works as well. So you'll be able to go there and see the same kinds of things and get credit for viewing it. In the download section, this is something you might want to check into today, is this IEP walkthrough for district administrators. It's on the, again, on our website under Learning Center and Indiana IEP System. Learning Center, IEP System. Bottom of the page under downloads, there's a walkthrough for district administrators. So that's really what I'm going to be following through today, and we'll share that as we need. So hopefully you're here ready to go through this today. Like I said, I'm going to go through the general idea of access to the system, roles of the administrator in Indiana IEP, and then touch on a few main issues that we run into as we're looking at the system itself. So the big thing first is access to Indiana IEP, and this is something I have, and I can share this with you as well, but this is our access procedure. So it really starts, the system itself is pretty secure. It works through Learning Connection, so a lot of folks get those confused. Learning Connection is just the portal. Indiana IEP sits behind it and Learning Connection manages the access there. So for a new teacher, make sure they have joined Learning Connection, have their SPN in there. You have to accept them into your school community and give them IEP access at the community level. And this teacher will have to join all the school communities that they need in order to access their students in the IEP system. So for right now, this is what governs that process. And probably for at least the remainder of this school year, you'll see this for the most part. There's going to be, I'm going to talk about some other options that are coming here shortly, but I wanted to make sure we touch on this first. So if you are new teachers need access to the system, this is the process, and again, I'll send this out to everybody as we go through it. But new teacher, Learning Connection administrator has to give them access and set the permissions. When that permission is set in the IEP system, by default, the new teacher is listed as an unknown user. So we'll talk about that when we go to user administration here in a little while. But that's where the district administrator will have to give them a role in the IEP system. So as a teacher of record, administrator, another level of administrator, or like a team member, for example. So those are big things. Once those are set up, you'll be able, the teacher will be able to get into everything. So that's one thing. I know we're kind of fresh into the school year, to make sure teachers are getting the school access they need. Make sure they've joined the school communities that they have students within, and also remove the school communities that they no longer need to access. So this is Learning Connection right here. And as far as communities go, I'll just give you an example here. Within the communities, everyone has the option to leave a community. So if you no longer need access to a school, as a teacher, you should be cleaning that up as you go. You should not have access to schools that you do not serve. That's a bit of a FERPA violation to have access to those records that you no longer need to. So make sure you leave the communities. You no longer have students with, if you no longer have students in that school, leave that school community so you don't have access to them any longer. I can tell you, every time I do a training for teachers, we have folks that move around to different districts, and inevitably someone still has access to the previous communities and schools. So make sure you leave those here. Now, I don't want to confuse things too much, but there will be more information coming about this, because Learning Connection is in the last year of its function for us right now. So within this coming year, we'll start to get information soon. I was just reviewing a document today actually around this information, but we're going to be piloting this with a few districts going forward, switching over to a thing called the Link portal. And what this is supposed to do for us is combine all the needed access at the state level into one portal, which will include the IEP system. So the good news is the IEP system is not going to change. So everything we're talking about today will still be valid as long as we're using Indiana IEP. What's going to change is the way we access it. So instead of going through Learning Connection, which is what we do right now, we'll be going through a link portal, which will look like this. And so you'll have different tiles for each thing that you have access. So if I'm a district administrator or a cooperative administrator, I'd have a different set of tiles than I might have as a teacher of record. So Indiana IEP will be one of those tiles, and you'll be able to click on that and go to your sites and get into your student and see your caseloads there. So like I said, the access to Indiana IEP is governed by Learning Connection. So if that person, that teacher of record, still has permission in Learning Connection to access the IEP system and to access your schools, they're going to continue to show up in the IEP, because there's a user file that's run every night that picks up information from Learning Connection and posts it into the IEP system. So looking at teachers. So if you're trying to clean up your sites, actually there's going to be some information coming out, as that's going to be part of the transition to the link initiative and the link portal is cleaning up our access. We don't have teachers that we no longer serve our students or attend and work with our schools. So yeah, the cleanup process, like you're mentioning, Emily, it starts in Learning Connection, where you can turn off the IEP access at the corporation level and kick them out of those communities, or that's probably a little forceful, but remove their access to the corporation and communities there. And you might need to work with your Learning Connection administrator to make that happen right now. So the difference with this new link portal is that we'll have more direct connection to your student information system. So that's what's going to tell, no problem. That's what's going to tell the IEP system and the link portal where the teacher needs access, where students are going to need to appear. So once the link initiative is fully engaged, which should be by the end of this school year, or at least this summer, there's going to be no need for things like that real-time report that everyone's kind of struggles with at the beginning of the school year, because we'll have a direct connection to your enrollment list in your school information system or student information systems locally. So that's going to remove a lot of headache for folks as we're going forward. But there'll be more information coming about that. I don't want to dwell too much on that today, because I know there'll be a lot more information coming for that purpose, to let you know what's going to happen. And that's going to be a integration with the special ed department and your technology coordinators in the technology department to get that switch over to happen. So there'll be more, like I said, more information coming out about the pilot information, and then opportunities for you to probably sign up to switch over to the new system this spring. So there'll be more opportunities for that. So lots of more information coming as far as that goes, and we'll see we'll see about how that works out for everybody, and we'll be sharing that information on our sites as well. So make sure you get that information from all different avenues. So the last thing I wanted to mention before I go into the IEP system is a method for you to get updates and information from us. We have a newsletter called the IEPRC Insider, which is another website that I'm going to share with you here that you can sign up for. I'll just type in there, and there it is. So if you click on that link, it'll take you to a landing point to sign up for that newsletter, and that will give you information around, what we try to do is monthly let people know what sessions, workshops are coming, any changes to the IEP system, any noteworthy news that you need to be aware of as a special ed teacher or administrator, and we'll try to make sure we keep that information flowing to you as we get it. So the link initiative will be part of that as it starts to develop further. So with all that, now we're ready to go into the IEP system itself and take a look around and see how that looks for an administrator. So I do appreciate questions. If you have questions, you can, let me make sure you can do that. I think you can unmute yourself if you want to verbally ask a question. I'm not sure if I have that option there right now, but at the very least, you can type in the chat any questions you have. If you want to hear something again, or you have specific things that you're hoping to hear about today, if I don't touch on those, please make sure you ask, and I'll be happy to go in and look in the IEP system for you. And also, before I get too much deeper into this, I want to also share that if you do have questions, I do recognize quite a few names on the list of attendees today, but you can always reach out to us at the Resource Center with a service request if you'd like us to work out, like right now, a virtual workshop with your staff or yourself. Or if you just have a question, our emails are all available on our site as well. So we'd be happy to entertain any questions you have. And if we can't answer it, we know people who can. So just feel free to ask, and we'll try our best to get you a good answer for your questions. So having said that, we're going to dive into the IEP system. Keep in mind, as you're going in here as an administrator, you will have access to all schools in your district, but as you set yourself up in Learning Connection, administrators have to join at least one school community for the system to accept them in. So the first thing we land on in the IEP system is this right here. This is the main menu page in Indiana IEP, and we start off with the message of the day. You may or may not feel comfortable using this, but first of all, there's information sliding across there relevant to what's going on in the IEP system. You can see here, for example, on this page that talks about a release, which is the update to the system. You should get notification here at the top of this page at least 2 weeks ahead of time of any change to the Indiana IEP, a little warning that it's coming at least, and some information around what to expect. Along with that will be a webinar, and I usually try to do some kind of walkthrough with that as well, and address it in trainings that we do as we go through the school year also. You can also add messages here if you want to. There's a little edit message here. As a district administrator, you can click on edit message and set who's going, what message you want people. You can set up, I think there's 10 slides here. You can create, this is a rich text field, so you can change the font size. You can change, if you just wanted to say hello, just like that, you can make it bold. You can make it bigger. And you can change the color, all that fun stuff. And when you do, you can update the message. And as we scroll around, we should see something that says hello eventually. A lot going, there's our hello. So as a district administrator, you can put things at the top of the page that you want your staff to be aware of and have that scroll across there as often as you like. So that's something to keep in mind if you need to, just another way to share information. As we go through the widgets on the page, these are all relevant to your district now. This shows district level information. Keep in mind that all these pie charts update nightly, so you'll see if there's a whole bunch of people doing case conferences in a given day, you won't see the change on your pie charts or your bar graphs until the next day. So keep that in mind. If you see, hey, we just completed it, we shouldn't have any more red on our district compliance pie chart there, it may just take it till overnight to check that out. Most of these are interactive, so if you click on them, it's going to show you a list of students in this case that meet those criteria. So the first one is students with autism. There's 77 students in that category. Click on the box there, and there's all 77 of them. You can see who they are, who their case manager is, all that detail there. You can also print out this list, by the way. If you go all the way to the bottom, there's a print results or export. So anytime you see a list like this in the system, you should be able to print these results or export them, and the export puts them into an Excel spreadsheet. So just keep that in mind. Whenever you see a list, you can export it. So the district compliance pie chart is just, as you mouse over it, it'll give you some numbers and a percentage. Yours is probably a whole lot better than this one, this being a sample site. If you do service logging, you may have use of this one. It will give you students in receiving different services, and then what service logs are in place, and you'll be able to view those. And then we have overdue dates, which hopefully you have none. School compliance, which just as an administrator, district administrator, you can see all the schools you have access to and how their compliance is going right now. So that's something to keep in mind. It's a nice feature. You can get a visual of that. And the nice thing here is when you go in here, if you click on the pie chart, it takes you to that school. And now I can see all the teachers of record in that school and the pie charts for their own individual compliance. And then I can click on that little pie chart, and now it takes me to their caseload. So let me walk you through that again. So on the front page, we have a school compliance table, I guess, a list, and we can click on the compliance pie chart there, which takes us to the list of teachers of record in that building. And then I can click on any one of the pie charts for a teacher or administrator, anybody who has a caseload, and see what their caseload looks like. So it takes me right down to that level. So you can do lots of things that way. You also have access to Message Center on the front page. So this is something if you have an issue that system doesn't seem to be working correctly, or you can't find the student, or something like that's going on, you can send a message directly to PCG. And these are more technical issues that you might have, and they can usually sort those out for you. Sometimes most times I can take care of those things as well, but there will be issues occasionally that I have to bring PCG in. But if you want to send them a message, say I need to add something to the system, or I'm not sure how to do this, you can send them a message or send me one, and we'd be happy to help you out there. And then you'll get an email when the reply comes back through this system. You'll also get notifications if you carry your own caseload, or if you've been added to a case conference committee team, you will get a message around that too. So the last thing I want to talk about on this front page is at the bottom of the page, the documents piece. So you as administrators can add your own documents to this list. You can add to any school you have access to. If you put them in this general file, everybody who looks at the front page will have access to these things. So if you have transportation forms, transfer forms, or documents that you want every teacher to have access to whenever they access the IEP system, you can put them here and get them right away. So when we're looking at this piece, there are some guidelines. I know some folks are using the EdPlan Connect tool, and that's something the state is offering right now. So parents can access student records, sign IEPs, and get notices virtually, or not virtually, but online, electronically. They'll get notifications, and they'll be able to sign in and do that. And once it's enabled, whenever there's a new document created for the student, the parents are going to notification that there's a document for them to review. So when you create a new notice of case conference or permission form or upload a document into the student's records, the parents should get a notification of that. And for IEPs right now and service plans, parents can also sign and accept those online. So they can do that. And we're in the process right now of adding to that. So by the time we're done with this process, parents should be able to, anything that requires a signature, a parent should be able to sign that in the portal. So if it's permission to test forms, consents, those kind of things would all be available for parents to review. They're available for them to review right now, but they'd also be available for them to sign and accept down the road. So that's something I think will be delivered this year at some point. And if you're not engaged in that EdPlan Connect right now, that's something that you reach out to PCG through that the message information there, the message center, and they'll be happy to give you the information there. There's FAQs there. There is a one-page document for parents, and there's more besides. If you'd like to have that information, we can help you out with that too. The other things to mention on this front page are the system updates. So if you notice the system updates at the time, if you get an indication that a system update has occurred or is about to, there will be some release notes available for you here. So this will give you exactly what's changing and give you a link to a brief webinar that PCG creates that they'll be able to guide you, step through some of that information. And if you remember that IEPRC Insider will also be sending out a little more detailed video of the workings of the change, if it's a significant change to the system at least. So the last thing on this front page here is I wanted to point to this IDOE tab, and primarily this is just to share. This is where you can find translated versions of the procedural safeguards or parent rights. So all those things are pre-translated. We have the English version here as well, but keep that in mind. That's in place for you. So that's there for you, so you can keep that ready to go. So you don't have to ask the system to translate it each time. It's there for your needs. Any questions around the front page here? Any questions around what we've seen so far? I can look at the chat. Let me open the chat back up so I can see what's going on. So to remove a school, that's a little bit more of a process that has to go through the Department of Education, and they'll have to remove the school and work with PCG to make sure it comes out of the system there. So that would be the process for that, because PCG won't remove a school if there's still active records within it. So that's something that has to be worked out, where those records are going to go. There's a little housing site that holds those records if there's no definite school where that all those students are going to. As we just had that recently, where there was a school that was just more or less incorporated into another system, so we were able to move all those students to into that system pretty easily, but that's not always the case. So make sure if you're removing a school, Department of Education is your first bet, and then if there are no active student records in that school, then PCG can deactivate that site for you. And likewise, if there needs to be a new school site engaged, or a change of school name or number or things like that, it all starts with the Department of Education, getting that sorted out with them, and then they'll work with us and with PCG to make sure that the new school is added, or the names changed, or the numbers are updated, or whatever happens to be going on. We have all kinds of crazy things that happen every year, and we are getting pretty good at handling all those different options and modes that we might get in. So just start with the Department of Education, and then we'll work out things from there. So as we're looking at this page, your menus at the top of this page do look different than what a teacher of record will see. They won't have an admin option. They won't have all the report options that you have. So the menus do look different based on meeting purpose. Keep in mind, if you get one of the most common, I guess, early emails I get every year is, hey, I've logged into the system and I only see main menu and log out as my two options at the top of the page. And what that indicates is that that teacher needs to be given a role in the system. So that the menu at the top of the page is really tied to the role you have in Indiana IEP. So make sure you give them a teacher of record role, and they'll be able to get into student records and start working from there, or team member, or district administrator, or school administrator. We'll talk about those different roles here shortly. So let me start at the green menu at the top of the page and kind of walk our way across those so you can ask questions and get an idea what's going on with some of these different pieces. So the progress monitoring piece, progress monitoring wizard is really not something the teacher or administrator is going to mess with too much unless you're carrying your own caseload, because this is where teachers will go in and document progress on goals for students that they have on their caseload. The thing to keep in mind with this list is it's only active, eligible students that have final and accepted IEPs. So it's not going to show, if the IEP's got a little blue envelope by it, those goals from that blue envelope IEP are not going to show up yet on the progress monitoring wizard. The IEP has to be final and accepted. That's also the case right now. The state pulls accommodation data from the IEP system. So in order for the accommodations to get to the TIDE report, which has just been opened up and all that for state assessments, the student's IEP where those accommodations are recorded must be final and accepted. So that means that if it's an initial, the parents have to sign off on that IEP before it can be implemented and all those things uploaded to the state or retrieved for the state. If the student's already eligible, then that means the 10 instructional days have lapsed and the IEP can be accepted by default, or the parents have signed sign that notice of implementation to waive those days. In that case, they can, the information will be pulled in. So it must have a green check mark, or it could be technically a stop sign or any symbol but the blue envelope. And those, once that's accepted in the system, those information can be progress monitored, and the accommodations will upload. So we've gotten a lot of questions also, by the way, around the calendar, which is the next piece I want to talk about. This is the school system calendar. As a district administrator, this is what you see. And just keep in mind that this is where you can manage different things. So this will, if you have a snow day like you see here, which is kind of unlikely for us in September, but if you have a snow day, this is where you can click on the school day and change the date type. So this is a snow day, or we'll say, this is what happened last spring, canceled for this piece, update the database, and there it is. So you can keep that in mind. So, because this is what governs the IEP system's timelines for evaluation specifically. So the 50-day timelines, the 20-day timelines, things like that are all governed by this calendar. So you want to make sure it's accurate. You also have opportunity, a little bit later, I'll show you the schools piece. There's a calendar for each school as well. So something's different about, because we're going to have some interesting things this school year where we have some schools that are in session and maybe another one is out of session due to COVID outbreak or something like that. I hope that doesn't happen, but you can go into an individual school and set that calendar to reflect that. That way the timelines for students in that school building reflect the actual time spent on instructional time spent with that student. So the daily pieces, you can click on those and adjust the dates as an administrator. As a teacher of record, all you can do is see this. You also have the ability to edit school years. So this is one thing to check every year to make sure that your current school year, the start date is correct. So that's one thing I noticed with some districts have asked me about dates not showing up right in the IEP system. And the first place I look is the calendar to make sure it's updated and accurate. So if this is a district-wide event, so if it's a snow day for your whole district, you want to do that at the district calendar, and then it will populate down to the school sites. If it's a school event where maybe a pipe burst in a school or the power went out or something like that, we had to cancel school that day for that building only, then you would go into that building only and make that adjustment, and it wouldn't affect anybody else. If you put something on the district calendar, then it affects everybody in the district. If you put something in the school calendar, it just affects that school. And we'll look at the school calendars here shortly too. So Smart Scan is something, I'm going to touch on this real quickly. I know that, and we'll try to get a look at this a little bit later today too, but whenever there's a section of an IEP that needs to be signed, there'll be a place for a parent's signature, then there'll be easy facts at the bottom. So that's one way you can have a parent sign that document, however they're going to do that, either hand it to you or mail it back to you. And then that signature with the barcode at the bottom can be scanned to the number that will appear on that page. So you can do that. And if you have a fax machine or access to something that can fax that for you, you can use that. If you don't have that and you just have, maybe your copy machine can scan for you, or you have a scanner that's available, you can use this Smart Scan tool and scan a document, a signed document, to your computer and then upload it here. And then once you click upload files at the bottom of this page, it'll send that scanned document to PCG and they'll scan the barcode on their end. And then the same thing happens that happens with the IEP or the easy fax option, is that the barcode is scanned and then that document is attached to the right student's records in the system, and you can see that signed document in their document section by the IEP or notice or whatever it happens to be that was created for them. So that's what Smart Scan can do for you. So if the easy fax option is not working for you, or it's not going to work in the future, this might be a solution that can help you out going forward. So the next piece is under admin, and this is going to have quite a bit going on. I'm going to go through each one of these things if I can and let you know how each part works. The first is the users. So if you have a new user to the system, they start off as an unknown user. So you can look here for all these different user types, and there's an unknown user there. If you click on view unknown users, then there's the folks you will find. So at this point, you can click on that person's name and then change their user type. So whatever role that they're going to serve within the system. So the main user types that we have to consider are team member, right above unknown there. A team member is just a teacher of service only. So it might be your related service professional, it would be like your occupational therapist or physical therapist would be a team member, because they'll be limited in that they can't create final IEPs in the system. They can add to them, they can do just about everything else, but they're not going to be responsible for creating final IEPs. The teacher of record, obviously same deal. You can create your own caseload, you can set up conferences, create final documents in the system fully. So that's our typical setup. You might run into the state-run facility level 1 and 2. These are, you might see some folks listed in your user list that are unfamiliar to you, and they should have an indication that they're from the school for the blind or school for the deaf. So if you have a student that is being served by one of those state schools, you can indicate, I think level 1 is a teacher of record, level 2 is a teacher of service. So whatever you want their staff, what role you want their staff to serve, you can choose that. Special ed coordinator and school administrator that come up here are school building level administrator roles. So there's not much difference between the two things. Typically the special ed coordinator also will carry a caseload, although as a school administrator you can as well. And you'll have access to all students in the building and be able to review progress monitoring and do all those and generate reports based on your school building only. So the district administrators, there's two types of them. I guess the main district administrator role just has access to every school in your district. So if you work for an individual district, you'll have, if you have this role, you can get into every school and every IEP within that school without being on the case, or without adding students to your caseload, or without being invited to a case conference. The district admin transfer is, as you might imagine, lets you access the transfer process and accept and request transfers in the system. So with that piece, you may want to indicate will receive transfer notifications. So if you indicate this person is a district admin that receives transfer or has those transfer rights, then you probably want to indicate they'll receive the transfer notification. So they'll get an email when the transfer has been created or been requested or completed or requested. Okay, and really the rest of these things you don't have much to do with. The schools are already set from your access based on the communities you've joined in Learning Connection. So all these schools you see here, you could check on them and you can give a person access for a day, but overnight when that user file runs, it'll change them back to as they're set up. I get that email every once in a while where someone gets frustrated with having to go in here daily and add school access here. And the reality is that's governed by Learning Connection. So if you want someone to get access to a new school building, they have to join the school community and then be accepted there, and then the school will show up for you here. Now that's going to change with the link portal, because in the link portal, you as a district administrator will actually be able to set all this up yourself. So you'll be able to indicate who gets access to what on your own. The link initiative is just going to tell Indiana IEP what districts everyone has access to, and you'll be able to say, well, that person should have access to these 4 schools. So that's a change that's coming with that, but not immediately, but it'll be coming down the road. So the rest of this page is really not much to do. These really don't do anything for you until you get to the service certifications. I'll try to talk briefly about this. If you want to use Indiana IEP for service logging, you can. So if you check off occupational therapy for somebody, then when they go to the wizards, they'll have an occupational therapy documentation wizard, or service logging wizard, and they'll be able to go in there and document services that way. So Susan, with your question, the district administrator is the only person that can do transfer events right now, because that's a corporation or district level event currently. Yep. So once you have this updated, you can update the database. You can, there's a little more details here. You can add email alerts if you want to. There's a lot you can set it up so this person will get email alerts for any one of these events, and you can mark off when those things are going to happen. So if you have an eligibility event, then, or an IEP is created, you can say 5 days after it's due, or whatever you want to do. So there's some options you can do within this, but the only drawback to this is that, it has to be set up for each individual user here. So there's not one thing where I can say all teachers of record have this role or get these notifications, or all teachers of service. So it's kind of a fine-tuned thing. So not many people use this, but it is there. If you want to set up email alerts for someone, it's under admin and users. Way at the bottom of the page, there's an add email alert. So the other things that you will be aware of as far as the administrative abilities here are these view user activities and view user change buttons you see here. So those two things allow me to set a time frame and see everything the students or this teacher has done in the system over that time period. So I can look at all the students they've accessed and in general get an idea of what they've done in those systems and when. So I can get those, if for whatever reason they need to look at user actions or their activity in the system, that's available. So I remind teachers of this all the time, that everything you do in the system is documented. So if they access a student, if they add something into the system, then we can get into that. So as far as the extent of the email alerts, what you see here, I'll answer that one here. So you can see there's the options that we have there. So if there's a referral, if there's an eligibility event, if there is a rejected, proposed, this is all we have right now. So we'll send you an alert for those pieces. And you might experiment it with yourself and see how it works for you. Like I said, I don't know that I have too many districts that have started to use this right now, because it is a little bit daunting in that there's a lot going on with that. So I don't want to give that person those rights. And one last thing before I jump off this page. So you mentioned, some folks have mentioned, trying to clean up their sites. For right now, if you change someone to unknown, then that effectively blocks their access to the IEP system. So even though they might have the permission set in Learning Connection, if they're labeled as an unknown user, they will not be able to get into student records. So they can go to the site, but they'll just have main menu and log out as their options when they get into the system, and that is all. So that might be something for now, to make sure that that person can't access any student records. So as we're looking at the admin tools, I'm going to go back to these. We just talked about the users. I'm going to go to schools. This is pretty straightforward stuff. You can see here a list of all the schools that are in this particular district, or all the schools that I have access to. As an administrator, I can see and interact with the individual schools. I can click on the school name and adjust things like length of school day, add the address, and that information. So if I update this here, this will actually appear on the top of the IEP if I change that, add to that address. Length of school day, this will also influence that LRE calculation. So you can update things here. So if the individual schools have different lengths of their day, you can make that adjustment right here. So any new IEPs would then capture that information. The other things you'll find are the pie charts. I mentioned that. So under admin school, you can see pie charts for each one of the schools. You click on the pie chart, it takes you to a list of all the teachers of record in the building, and you can see what each individual has as far as their pie chart, and from there go right into their caseload and see what's going on and see what's happening for that individual and their students on their caseload. Last thing on this piece is the calendar. So every one of these should match from the start. As you can see here, this is Cole's Military Academy calendar. I just added that COVID-19 day on the 7th at the district level, and lo and behold, it shows up at the school level too. So I could also do some things here though, if we had, say yesterday, we had a snow day, just at this building for some reason, we had a freak snowfall at our individual building. Now this building has a snow day built on their calendar, and that affects your instructional days for your school year then for that school only. Now if I go back to my district calendar, hopefully stay with me here. If we go back here, there's nothing on the 14th for that day for the district. It's just there for that individual school. Right there. And I can also then adjust the school years at that school building. So, you know, I know there's some districts who have the high school starts earlier or later than some elementary schools or preschools and that kind of thing. So you can adjust that here and have a different start date. As long as it adds up to the total dates of instructional days that we need for our state, it doesn't really, it doesn't make much difference, but you do have that capability of adjusting the calendar here. So the last thing I'm going to talk about here under admin is school systems. And before I go into this, let me ask if there are any questions so far. I do appreciate you guys asking questions as we're going. And hopefully I've been able to touch on each one of those as we go through it. Feel free to ask if I'm going too fast or not hitting on something you want to see. Please let me know and I'll be happy to hit that for you again. So as we're looking at under admin and school system, you can see under the blue menu item, we have a whole lot of things that are available to us. Now, these are only things that administrators can get to, and they all do something. So we're going to go through each one of these and just show you what's going on. So the first one, I always, for some reason, start over on the right-hand side. The parent portal pending actions, if you click on that, this is you can generate a report that shows you all the pending actions for the parent portal. So more or less, if you have any requests out there for parents to sign off on. Yeah, before I get deep in that, I'll go to Christy, I'll show you that. So the district calendar is what you see first on the green menu at the top of the page. So the question is, how do you, can you show how to get to the admin calendar again versus the school? So this district calendar shows up here. You can see that there, and under admin and schools, there's a school calendar by the school name. And just click on that little calendar icon, and there you can see the individual school calendar. So you can keep that different. So the parent portal piece may not be there for everybody. So if you don't have the parent portal engaged or not using it, you might not see the parent portal piece there. So all the purpose of that is just to see all the actions that are taking place if you are running that system. And then you can see a list of all the parents and all the actions that you're waiting for from them. If they're haven't signed IEPs and you're waiting for that, or they haven't reviewed documents and you're waiting for them to review a document, all that record will show up there. The managed service log piece is really not relevant for everybody either. This is the only time this is active for you is if you are actively using the service logging system with your staff, and they ask to delete a record. So they made a mistake on a log, and they logged a service incorrectly, and they realize that, then they can go and delete that service, and you have to approve that. Their supervisor has to approve that removal. Just that's one thing, that's a Medicaid process to document that to make sure it's accurate. So the assigned schools piece is something that I'll touch on. I'm going to give you a little warning as we get into this. So this assigned schools piece, allows you to temporarily, let me stress that, temporarily update grade and school. So if for some reason the real-time report hasn't been run yet and the student's grade shows last year's numbers or the wrong grade or the wrong school, and you can make that adjustment here. Just know that it is, again, a temporary thing. So when that student file runs every night, it's going to put that student back wherever that student file says. So whatever if the student file is updated and matches what your changes are, the student will stay there. If the student file is different and doesn't match what you've changed here, the grade and access school, then they'll change back to it, to whatever the student file says. So this is most of the time a temporary fix. So, but if you need to get to it quickly, you can. So you can change the grade level for a student, you can change what school they're in your district, and then when you update the database, they'll be there right now. And you can, if you need it for a case conference right now, you can do that. But one of the things that I mention to folks a lot of times at this point is most of the time when I work with middle school, junior high schools, they have access to the schools that feed into their system, or so they can access IEPs and help develop a 5th or 6th grade IEP as they're moving into that middle school or junior high. Same thing for high school. If I'm working in a high school, I probably will have access to the 8th graders coming into my school building so that I can help develop and review that IEP as soon as possible. So that's just something to talk about locally on how you want to manage that, but that's something that a lot of districts do. So the big one I get questions on at this time of the year are student transfer requests. And so let's walk through that here and give you some insight on the workings of this particular system. So before I dive in, let me go through the steps of the process. So the first step is when you're requesting a transfer, is to go in and click that and add the information in, send out the request. So on the other end of that request, the previous school district has to approve that. And once they approve that transfer, then it comes back to you. And you'll see in a minute, we'll go to review requests, and you'll see a list of all those students that have had transfers accepted, and then you have to accept it locally. So you have to match up that information coming from the other district with the right student in your enrollment list. So at that point, if the student's not yet enrolled or is not on the real-time report, the transfer can't be completed. So until that that student is in your district, their STN is sitting in the Indiana IEP site for that school, until that happens, we can't complete the transfer. So the transfer can be ready before that enrollment list is updated. So once it is, then we can complete the transfer. But that's probably the most common question I get. I've had this transfer approved from District A, but now I can't find the student in my district yet. And that's because the real time. So that will change with the link portal. At least that's what we've been told, that your student list will be governed by your student information system. So whatever students you have, hopefully that works as smoothly as we've been told. I anticipate it will, but it'll be interesting to see how that changes things, because the issue that we'll have to address with that one is how frequently is the system going to check for updated enrollment lists, because there's going to be some situations where districts are doing a little tug of war with transfers and enrollments and all that kind of fun stuff. So that'll be something to work out down the road. But yeah, I think the best news for me is that real-time report is going to be retired once we're fully into that link portal. So I think we're all ready for that to happen. So we'll just see how that goes, though. So that's a good question. So let's go through this with it when we request a transfer, and then we'll get into that. So we don't really have to change anything here with the IN aggregate, because that's the same for everybody. Source district, you just have to know where the student's coming from. Transfer date, usually the day of. And then the name, what I tell folks a lot of times, if I was going to request a transfer of myself, I would just put the first initial for that student, because there's all kinds of situations where folks will misspell the student's name, and that blocks a transfer because they'll search for the student on their end that doesn't come up because I spelled it differently. Or when they send it my way, I misspelled things on my end, so things aren't working out. So that's a basic thing to keep in mind. The most important thing about this transfer is the student ID. That's something that has to be the same. That's the point that all this stuff connects. So student ID, their S is their student test number, so their STN goes there, their date of birth goes in. You can do up to 5 of these transfers at a time from different districts if you need to. And when you're ready, you click request student transfer. And if you forget to fill something in, it won't work very well for you. So just make sure it's all completed. So review requests. This one's nice. We have some samples. We can look at all these things. So students requested first that I've asked for a transfer from our district. So students requested a transfer from, I can go in, click on details, and approve that transfer request if needed to. So in this, let me clear that student so you can see. So this is what you're going to see. You're going to say find student to transfer. And what I usually do here is if they give me the whole name, I go ahead and just take it back to the initials and then click on view student. And there's a student that matches up. So this is asking for a student to transfer out of my district. If I click on that name, now it's saying it's matching these 2 records up for transfer. And then I can put in a reason for exiting and approve that transfer request. Or if I'm saying I don't have this student or something's not right here, I can deny the transfer request. Now keep in mind that at no point does a school have a right to block a transfer. If it's a legal request from the district where the student's enrolled, the student does not have to officially exit your school district. They don't have to come and formally request transfer from you. There's nothing in our rule or law that supports that at all. And you're going to get in some big trouble from the Department of Education for doing those things. So if a district asks for a requested transfer records, then your job is to approve that. And that's pretty much it. So that's what happens when we're looking at the transfer and review requests. So if someone's asking for us pending requests for transfers to, this just gives a list of those that I've asked for a transfer and hasn't been approved yet. And this last list are students that have been approved for transfer to my district. So this is kind of the last step of the process. So we asked for the transfer, the previous district approves, and now that appears right here. The last step to get the student's records into our system is to approve that transfer ourselves or to complete it. So at this point, this student's STN, this student's record must be in my district. If they're not, I can't approve this request. So if I go through, click select, I'm going to do the same thing I've been doing here. I just take those just to cover myself from misspelling. One thing you do not want to do is mess with that STN, because I've seen people do that before, and then we get a transfer of the wrong person's records into a student, and that creates a whole mess. So do not mess with the STN. If it's not there, it's not there, and there's other process we might have to go through to make sure you get that. So good news, this student is in my district. So if I click on that student's name, now it's going to give me some more details. I can update this information. If I pick the wrong student, I can clear it, but that's usually not, as long as I keep the STN in there, that's not going to happen. It's going to tell you all the information that's going to transfer to you, and then you can schedule that transfer event. So keep in mind when you do that, it's not an immediate thing. It'll happen in the afternoon and be ready for you the next morning. So that's something to keep in mind. I think it happens after 4 p.m. And if there are a ton of transfer requests, it might be delayed till the next morning. So that's something to be aware of. I've noticed that to start school years, that if we have, especially the beginning of a school year and the season we just completed, really, those transfer requests come hot and heavy and frequently. So the system takes till the next morning sometimes to process all those. So there's not really a report that we can, well, thinking about it, maybe there is, but there's not really a report that off the top of my head that we can create for transfers. That's, you'll get a notification if there's a request, if you have that enabled in your account. So if someone requests a transfer, you'll get a note that that's done. You'll also get a note that one's been approved. So that's one thing that can happen for you. That I showed you that under the admin users, there's that option you can say we'll receive transfer notifications. So that will help. But Tricia, as far as getting reports about who's students who we transfer or transfer in, I don't think that's available, but we'll take a look here in shortly. So that's really the transfer process. I know it can be a little confusing. Some drawbacks are the response to the person on the other end, how quickly they respond to you. Keep in mind, once this transfer is done, then it fills in what's in the IEP system itself. So under the IEP process, everything that was, if the information coming from the previous district is the newest information, then it will fill in the workspace for you. So the problems you're going to encounter with that are that if we're having a situation where I know the students in my district, their STN's here, but the transfer request hasn't been approved from the previous school district, I need to go through and get this move-in going. So sometimes this happens where teachers will work through, get going, schedule the move-in conference, and then suddenly that transfer request is approved, and that's information from the previous school district fills everything in, and it will overwrite anything that's not part of a final and accepted document in the workspace. So that's something to really be aware of here with your staff, is don't approve the transfer request if you haven't talked it out with them first. But you want to make sure if they're already working on the move-in and have information in the workspace and developing an IEP for that student already, based on maybe it's a paper version or just what they know about the student, you can overwrite records that way, and that can be a little bit overwhelming. So let me answer these two. I see Marianne asked about what section referred to waiting for a parent's signature. The parent portal pending actions will actually show you if you have a final IEP or service plan that the parent hasn't reviewed or signed yet. So that's really the only, we haven't gotten to anything else that would address that right now. So as far as the other question is if they're transferring from another school district, will their IEP transfer when the request is coming from the secretary, or do we need to request? So someone is going to have to manually request a transfer, whether that's an assigned role your school secretary has or someone else in your school building has. It's something that will have to be done manually. There's no automation to this process. So at this point, so someone will have to go and do that. So, and that's something I think, Chrissy, you have a good question too. Will teachers be able to generate a report with a list of students who, will teachers be able to develop move-in IEPs before day one with Link Portal? Move-ins don't actually occur until your first day of school. We can't move in students before the first day of school. That's right out of Article 7, so that's something to keep in mind. So, I mean, you could do, the only way you'd be available to do that is to use paper IEPs to document what's going on, because real time doesn't run before school, your start date. So you can't even get new students into your system until school starts and that real time is available. So, so that's a good question, but I'm not sure there's an easy way around that. So I'm trying to keep up with all those questions. I appreciate as we're going through this. So as we're going through these pieces, I'm going to move on from student transfer, and we can come back to it if we need to. Unrecognized faxes. This is something if you have an upload that the system cannot read for whatever reason, you can view that and then assign it to the right student. In that case, there wasn't anything there. But I see that sometimes when there's something that gets crumpled on the fax and you can't read it, but you can manually assign that there. So that's something that doesn't happen often, but you can use it here. The merged student records, I've had to do this a couple times this year. I usually this only occurs 3 or 4 times in a school year usually. So it's not something that districts typically have to manage. So I always ask folks, this always makes me a little nervous, because what it is for whatever reason the student's been assigned 2 STNs. And so in your district you have both STNs there, and sometimes you have partial records on one, partial records on others, and you want to merge those into one. So the process though is to first make sure there's only one STN for that student at the state level, because that's going to cause problems if there's multiple STNs for students for state testing and all that fun stuff. So make sure that at the state level the STNs are merged into one, so you know which one you're going to keep. And when you come to the IEP system, that's where you start. Which student do you want to keep? Which student are you going to merge into that final record? So there's a little bit of a process to that. So I always ask folks, if you're going to engage in this, you have 2 STNs for the same student, that's a great time to call me up or give me or send me an email, and we can talk through the process, or we can just work out what to do there. So the next step is the inactive students. So this is, you have a list in your site of every single student that's been in your district. And so you have active students, which is what you find when you just search for them. Inactive students are also within the system. So if they've been deactivated by graduation or moving, whatever, all those records are still here. So you can access them. Also, if for whatever reason the student is inactive and someone asks for a transfer request, you can still transfer that student out, even if they are inactive. So keep that in mind, that you could still transfer inactive records as well. And what will happen for us in the way the system works is that when a student transfers out or is deactivated here, those records remain. And when you, so basically what happens, you put an exit date on their real-time report and don't claim them on real-time anymore, so that students, those records are still there in an inactive state. If you claim them again on real-time, then those records will be reactivated. So you're going to find that occasionally, if you claim a student that has been previously in your district, you might see a red stop sign right away, because what's active is all their old information. So maybe they've been gone for 3 years. You'll see the IEP, sure enough, there's an IEP in there for 2017. But we know that for the last 3 years, they've been in such and such a district. And once I get the transfer in, then that'll be updated to accuracy there. So who should we contact when the system tells you the record doesn't exist when trying to schedule a transfer? So that really, if the STN doesn't exist in your district, that's probably different by every district. So who governs your real-time report? Who sends that in? Who checks on that information for you? So that's that. I guess that'd be the conversation to have locally. Hey, this student's not showing up for me, and really you can check that pretty easily. Just do a search for students. Click on students, type in the STN. Do they show up as a result? If they don't, then they're not active in your site yet, and you can't complete a transfer yet. So something needs to be done on that real-time report to update that information. So inactive students, again, you can go by the STN, their name, find whatever you need. I don't know if I have any by that name. So these are inactive students. If you click on their name, you still have access to their history, their documents, contacts, parent info, exit information as well. So that's all there for you. So you can get to the information, see it, and print it out again if you want to. Excuse me. You just can't add to it because it's inactive records. So last thing I'm going to show you under school system is this little summary, and we'll go to reports here separately shortly. The summary just gives you a count of students in your school buildings, teachers of record, those kind of things. And you can play around with this if you want to as you're looking at it, but it just gives you a quick look at numbers. Like I can look at every teacher, how many students are they teacher of record for, how many teams are they on. So we can look at that pretty quickly. It just gives you some basic information. There's all of them right there. So just if you need to count number wise as far as eligibility areas and fun things like that, you can get that from that list. And that's we'll look at reports under the reports section here shortly, so that'll cover that piece. Under wizards, there's probably not much you're going to have to do as an administrator under the wizards piece. This is mostly the realm of our teachers of record. Billing Medicaid for health-related service document wizard is the place where you can recreate that consent to bill Medicaid form if you need to. So typically with move-ins and with initials, that comes out with the IEP, and we only need it that one time. But if for some reason you don't have it or you need to recreate it, you can do that here. The IEP at a glance document wizard is a way for teachers to generate a short version of the IEP for their peers to review and to have on hand if they're going to serve them in the classroom. It'll have demographic information, including the student's disability and their teacher of record, has their goals, services, behavior intervention plan, and accommodations all on that document. So it's a shortened version of the IEP in general. The caseload setup wizard is where you would go if you want to set your own caseload. You can search for your student in the school, add them to your database. As a teacher of record, I have to have the student on my data or my caseload before I can access the IEP. As an administrator, you don't need to set up your own caseload unless you want to. So you can do that. You probably don't have to. If you want to search for a student, you can search for them under student, and there you'll have them. The caseload admin wizard is a tool for you to manage other people's caseload. So I can look up someone else in the system, and I can go to their caseload and add students to the caseload or adjust that caseload. So if I wanted to add a student real quickly, let's see if we have any. Of course not. Let's see if I can find somebody in one of these schools that we can add in. Maybe not. There we go. So I can add this person, I'll add them as teacher of record there. Just know that if you add them as teacher of record and there's someone else already listed as teacher of record, then you just made that change. I'm going to go ahead and just add one student so you can see a couple things. So this is their caseload, just that one student right now. You can add more. You can remove all students. You can also transfer a copy. So I can remove, do not remove, and so that's a nice tool. You can move, if you have someone replacing another teacher, you can move that whole caseload over for them. On the other hand, it's not that hard for a teacher to develop and manage their own caseload there. So under reports, I'm going to go into just general reports and touch on a couple things for us. If you use the EdPlan Connect, there's some reports you can generate here that can help you with parent actions and information around their access to the system. Faculty and staff, the big thing for me, this is something that districts have been asking for a while. There's a progress monitoring log by caseload spreadsheet you can run. So I can look under our school and choose one of my teachers of record. I guess it doesn't matter. And then choose a date range. And what this will do for me, what this will do for me is someday, there we go. Let me run a report from the beginning of the school year-ish to now. what progress monitoring has been entered by this person in the system. So I can generate that report, and now in a little while it'll notify me of that it's been done, and it'll give me a list of the teacher's caseload and what progress monitoring on goals they've done. So I can see that right now. So that's something you can do as a district administrator. You can also do that as a school administrator, and just see how everyone's doing on progress monitoring. So if you feel, you set a due date at the end of the 9 weeks that progress monitoring should be completed for the first 9 weeks and submitted, you can run this report and see. You don't have to go into every caseload. You don't have to go into every student. You don't have to go into every person's account and find this out. You can go under reports, go under faculty and staff, and run that progress monitoring goals by caseload, and you'll get the information. So it's going to tell you the goal title, statement, present level, specially designed instruction, type, score, date, comments. So this has nothing to do with the documents list. This is if the data has been saved and recorded in the system. So if they've gone through the progress monitoring wizard and saved a data point for one of their students' goals, then it will show up on this list. So this says, so it doesn't have, because that's one of the issues I think we run into with the progress monitoring wizard versus going in and creating those data points. Because creating the data points it adds a lot of time for teachers to go through them all to do that. And so allowing them to use the progress monitoring wizard shortens that amount of time for them to enter information. And this then allows you as an administrator to check on that. And you can see when those things were done. Okay. So those are the big pieces. I guess there's one other one that I'd show you. Maybe a couple more. There's SE report. You can generate that here, and just as a check and balance. The indicator 11 and 12 is your EV report. You can check that as a check or balance against what you're recording in your SIS or other systems. So you can review those kind of things. Service logging reports are all available if that's something you're interested in. We also have the accommodations report. So the Indiana accommodations report, that Excel version, should be what's being submitted to the state for that TIDE report. So keep that in mind. If you review that and the accommodations don't look right there, then they're probably not going to be reported correctly to the state in that TIDE report either. And you want to make sure you double check that kind of thing and keep it as clean as possible. And it gives you a chance to review it with teachers then. Hey, you need to revise your IEP to make sure these accommodations are updated, because we've talked about the student needing read aloud and you don't have it on here. And that does remind me of this thing. And speaking of accommodations, I know everyone's fired up about these lately, and I'm going to share this little number with you guys, and I'll put this in the chat box too so you can all see it and get to it later. This is the Office of Student Assessment's guidance for accommodations. I get a lot of questions around accommodations, especially the read aloud and calculator changes that have happened recently. And you want to go to page 24, 25 in this, and it tells you here's the guidance for text-to-speech and human reader. That has changed since last year's running or non-running of the test. We didn't have any assessments last year. So this year, text-to-speech is allowed for grades 6 and up, and that's not just for directions, but also for the reading, the comprehension section. So keep that in mind. A lot of guidance here, and whenever I get a question around that, I try to lead people to this just to make sure the message stays consistent. So that's a good resource to have, print out and review, because it spells out exactly what accommodations are allowed, what they look like. It defines all of them. I get questions around the different pieces all the time around the different things like refreshable braille. What's that? What do all these different pieces do? This defines all those things for you and where it's allowed in the system. So that's a nice tool, resource to have it's saved in your bookmarks so you can come back to, because you're going to have a lot of questions around it this year, because nobody ran assessments last year at all. So it's been a whole 2 years since anybody's run them by the time we get to them this time around. So I just wanted to share that resource with you before I forget to do that. The other things, as we're looking at this, advanced reporting is something you have access to. We have a separate training for that specifically. So if you're interested in advanced reporting, look in our training catalog and there's some dates coming. Or if you have a group that you'd like us to walk through it, or you have some specific reports in mind, we can work with you on those kind of things too. Okay. So the last pieces, I can talk a little bit about this piece. There's not much you're going to need here in the My Calendar, My Docs, and My Reports because it's really relevant for the calendar. There's not much you're going to do there. The district calendar is where you're really going to have the information you need. My Documents is only going to be relevant if you have students on your caseload. So if you click on My Docs and there's no one on your caseload, you're not going to have any results there. If you do, you'll see, if you have students on your caseload under My Docs, you'll see all the documents listed that have been generated for that student in the system. So you can click on them, view them there if needed. The My Reports is just going to be a list of the reports that you've run recently. So, and they may show up for the whole district. So there's my progress monitor. There's probably not going to be much on that report since I haven't done anything in the system. So the last thing I want to get to is students and talk a little bit about that before we run out of time for us today. So this is where you as an administrator can go and search for any student you need to. And I'm going to go through my search. You can search for my last name. You can also click on view your caseload. The big piece I wanted to point to for you as administrators here and for anyone, you can click on this advanced student search. So this opens it up for you to search for more specific and filter your groups by specific criteria. So you still have the same options at the top for grade, school, and status, but then you get the compliance status added in. So you can look for everybody who's got a proposed IEP or service plan or out of overdue eligibility or something like that. You can also just list students by eligibility area. So you can see, I want to see all my students with traumatic brain injury. How many students are that? Or I can look for a specific learning disability. You can also filter by placement. So if I wanted to see all my SLD students in the resource room, I can make that a list for those students. And I can also add a service then. I can say who of those are receiving speech or language services or any related service from that. So you can generate a list there of everybody that fits those criteria. So those are all my students with specific learning disability in the system right now, within that 51 category for placement category. So the question is, how do you generate and monitor 504 plans in the IEP system? Well, you technically don't, because the 504 module is a separate edition that districts have to purchase for access. So if you access the 504 module, you'll have different reports and tools with that, and PCG is your contact for that piece. We don't have any access to that. That's each individual district contracts with them separately for the 504 plan. So you may have some things for the ILP in this because that's embedded for everybody, but for the 504 plan, those pieces are they'll be on the same site, but they're separate from the IEP piece. So I'm going to go back to students and touch on a couple of pieces there. If the district doesn't have that module, then well, each district has to figure out how to monitor and manage 504s then, because it's not the 504, by the way, is not a special ed thing. It's a general education. It's a civil rights discussion. Because if you have an issue with a 504 plan, IDEA is not it is not who governs that. It's Office of Civil Rights that governs that. So it's a little different ball game in those situations. Right, they follow different guidelines and they're simpler to get well, I don't want to get into 504 because we're getting too close on time today, but yeah, I would reach out to the Department of Education for support around that piece, and they should be able to give you some insight in what to do with for sure. So I'm going to go ahead and look at a caseload real quickly just so you can see one thing here, because I get a lot of questions around the compliance symbols. So keep in mind that if you go to a caseload and you have all these different signs and symbols, the first column there, the CP column, if you click on that, here's a listing of all those different pieces. So all those different symbols are all there. Yellow means something's coming due. Red means something is past due. If you see something green, that means we're on the right time frame. If you see a blue envelope, that's telling you that we're waiting for a parent response, either a signature or we're waiting for 10 instructional days to lapse for that student. The one symbol you will find, if there's been a transfer request, the transfer has been approved, then you'll see this T appear there, and that whenever the system sees that T, that's an indicator to start that 10 instructional day timer. So once you see that in the system, then 10 instructional days within that time frame, the move-in has to occur. So those are, you can look through those and see that's the, if you have any questions around the different compliance indicators. And I did want to go into one student so you can see a couple things that administrators can do within this and make some adjustments. So one of the issues that we're going to find, and this is on the move-in, I guess the move-in question, is a lot of times we have move-ins from out of state and we get a paper IEP, but they don't have any records in the Indiana IEP yet. So in those cases, we might have an STN, but no records. We just have a paper document. An administrator will have to go into the eligibility section. So this is inside an individual student's record. You see these blue menu items are the student's responses. And we want to enter in the eligibility date that we get from the other state's document. We can type that in and really want to fill in everything we can here. We want to put in the last meeting date. So the IEP system needs those two or three pieces of information in order for you to process and move forward with a move-in conference. And we need the last eligibility date, we need the last IEP date, and we also are going to need the primary, secondary eligibility if those exist. So that information will have to be saved here before we can process a move-in. Because if you don't have the eligibility information in, then you will get to the meeting purpose and won't see move-in as an option. Because in order for a move-in to be an option, the student must first be eligible. And so we have to define that here. So for an out-of-state move-in, someone's going to have to enter in the eligibility information so that you can move forward with that process. That happens quite often. And we have questions around that. The other things that we can do as an administrator, I guess we go into parent information. And this is something, if I go into one of the parents' entries here, you're going to see this. This is new for us. If you have the Parent EdPlan Connect Parent Portal enabled for your district, then this option will show up under the parent information for that guardian's entry. So for the parent portal to work, there must be a valid email address and at least one valid phone number in this record here. If you don't have that, it won't work. You can send out, if you just are updating the information right now, maybe I'll add in the phone number and update the email for the parent. Then I can click on send ad hoc access email, and that will send an email to the parent saying, hey, this has been enabled for you, and give them instructions on what to do. And they'll get it. And if this is enabled, then every time there's a change in the system for that student, like a new case conference is started, or a notice is created, permissions are created, those kind of things, the parent will get an email saying, hey, this has been started here, please log in and check this record or review this or whatever it happens to be. The email isn't going to give them too much information around details there, but it will get them started. So that's really the whole administrative portion in a nutshell. I know in a short hour and a half we went through a lot of information. Just keep in mind we have those walkthroughs, those videos that'll help you on our website that can guide you through this. If you need a refresher, you can always email questions. We'll be happy to do that and support you that way. If you guys have any, I'll hang out here for a little while. If there's any specific questions, we can answer those and keep them coming for a little while there. I would do want to honor your time. I know you guys are all busy men and women, so I want to make sure you have that we release you from this today on time. But I would ask that you take the time to visit that evaluation page. I'll type that in the chat box again. There we go. And I appreciate if you get to take just a little time and fill that out for us. It would really be helpful going forward. And I do appreciate your time. Again, if you have questions, I'll hang out here for a little bit. If you have any additional questions, if you want to just wait and gather your thoughts and email later, that's absolutely fine. In fact, I'll put my email up there. So if you want to email me later, feel free to do that. I'll be around. and don't feel bad about emailing me questions. That's my job. So just let me have it, and we'll go do the best we can. So hey, I do appreciate your time. Hopefully that helped. So as far as graduates, that's something that we can take care of. As far as graduates, we just have to make sure they're not being still reported on the real-time report, and then you can deactivate those students manually in the system. So when you search for their student, like if I have the student that I had up here, I can make this student inactive there. So if there's no record pulling that student to your district for enrollment, you can make them inactive and they'll stay inactive. But if there's something that's still reporting them as active, then they'll keep popping up. So, and we should see some updates to that student report that will indicate the students graduated and they won't show up on the reports any longer. Usually when the state gets that graduation report, they start deactivating those records for us or allowing us to do that. So the summary report, Pamela, is under admin and school system, and there you'll see that summary. So under admin, school system, summary, then you have some other information there. And that might also be helpful for you to use under students, that advanced student search, because that can give you some more detailed information there. As if I wanted to see who my students with developmental delay are, I could run that report here. And I should mention too that we're going to expand this little advanced student search to include graduation options and a couple other things as well, like testing options. Because the thing I get asked to do most often is probably tell me how many students are on my by diploma type, and then how many kids are taking the alternate assessment. So that's one thing that I think this December will be added to this page, so that you'll be able to filter and just show, hey, I want to know who's taking the alternate assessment, and be able to review that. So anyway, hey, I do appreciate your time. If there are any more questions, I'll hang out for a little bit and help out with those things, but feel free to ask me directly. And keep in mind, if you're still hanging on and you have a group that'd like to go through advanced reporting, or have your teachers would like to walk through with the IEP system, let us know. And right now we are limited to virtual sessions, but in the future, hopefully we'll get back to face-to-face stuff. We have that capability though to do virtual sessions and do something just like we did today to walk through with your staff. We also have Christy Wright on our staff, who is a licensed speech language pathologist. So if you need someone who is real knowledgeable with the IEP system and writing goals and working with students with language and speech needs, then speech and language needs, then she's a great resource as well. And we also have licensed school psychologists on our staff that are helpful in that regard as well. So any case, thank you for your time today. If there aren't any further questions, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing.